Hello, and welcome to the Kosh. I'm your host, Timber Smith, and I am super excited to be here today with you. Hope all you Kosh listeners out there are doing really, really well. But let's be honest, you know why I'm really excited? I'm excited because I've got another amazing guest for this week's episode. This week's guest is Jennifer Haese. Hey, Jennifer, how are you doing out there?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Okay. So, you ready to jump in?
Ready as ever.
Sounds good. Okay. So, Jennifer, can you please tell us a little something about yourself and what is your connection to the Kosh?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was not born or raised here, but I actually moved here about 10 years ago. And I grew up in Madison, went to school in Milwaukee, um, went to law school in Michigan, and then came back. And when I first moved to this area, it was a really hard adjustment because it was the smallest city I've ever lived in. And I thought to myself, I'll give it 5 years because that's kind of what I needed for reciprocity if I wanted to move somewhere else and practice. And in that 5 years, I just kind of fell in love with the city, and I ended up, gaining a lot of connections, and then eventually meeting my now husband. And I guess now you can say I'm a lifer. So I really love this community and the fact that they've embraced me and my family, and there's just so much to do.
Okay. Yeah. The Kosh does have a way of drawing you in and then keeping you once you're here. It's a pretty cool community.
It is. And I will say, I don't miss the traffic of Milwaukee.
Oh, no. Let me tell you, traffic was one of my deciding factors for not going back to Milwaukee. And, because, I don't want to give my life to travel, taking 45 minutes to go from one side of town to the other side of town.
It's so funny you say that because I'll never forget when I first moved here. I had to go to the other side of town to like some store to get something. And one of my neighbors was like, "You're going to go all the way to the other side of town?" And I was just like, that's crazy. Cause it's like 15 minutes, when I lived in Milwaukee, that's like an hour trip. So Bruh. It's all perspective, right?
It is all perspective. All right. We're going to jump into the first segment. First segment is called "What in the World is Going On With?" That is where you take the phrase "what in the world is going on with" and you share what is on your mind.
Mm-hmm. I would say, what in the world is going on with civility? And what I mean by that is that I think that there's just so much division and dissension that's happening today, that civility is really breaking down in our society. It's for me, I find it to be disheartening and frustrating, and and it's difficult, I think, sometimes to work through, but it's a necessity.
Do you got an example? Is there something specific that's on your mind, or that has happened, or has somebody made you feel some kind of way about something?
I've been feeling that way for a while. But what really kind of drove the stake home, so to speak, was my husband and I went on a trip to Colorado about a month ago. And we ended up going to a local restaurant, sitting down at the bar to have a drink and, grab something to eat. And some locals were sitting next to us. And the conversation started off pleasant, enough. It was pretty interesting how they dove right into some, the topics of COVID and, the mask mandate and things of that nature. And, through the conversation, I could just gather that, we had different philosophies on different things, but, still trying to keep it light and have a good time. And just through the conversation, it became really aggressive, and to a point where that individual started using, racial slurs and calling names and things of that nature. And I just thought, whoa, like, we can be different people and we can have different philosophies, but I just don't understand why it has to get to that level
Right.
just because there's difference, right? So to me, that was just a super disheartening experience that kind of solidified my concern of like the discord and the division that's present and continuing to sometimes I feel like grow.
You know, when when did difference become the divider? When it was
Yeah.
something that was celebrated in America. Our difference is what made America great, right? It's the
Hmm.
thing we were celebrating was the fact that we were this melting pot of difference. And
Yeah.
it's what made us stronger. And now difference is in there's no tolerance. There's no we can't even like we just can't break bread anymore.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
absolutely.
I think that's a really good point. All right. My what in the world is going on with is what in the world is going on with Facebook Marketplace delivery. Now,
Bruh.
I'm gonna tell you. Here's what I mean. So, y'all know, Kosh listeners, I've been going through this remodel, and part of the remodel process is you got to get a lot of stuff out your house so you can get the new stuff in your house, right? And
Right.
I'm like, let's go on and sell some things. So I've been selling stuff, and you know, been selling it. What I would say is a dirt cheap. Cheap enough to get it out the house fast, right? Because we ain't trying to
Right.
make a profit; we're trying to make space.
Yep.
And why people you put something on Facebook Marketplace for $1, and people talking about, can you deliver that? What?
Bruh.
No, no, it's $1. It is $1. It's $5. It costs me
Right.
more than gas to deliver it than what the item is being sold for. And the
That's very true.
understanding of the marketplace etiquette, as far as I'm concerned, is you got to pick it up. If it ain't in your description that you are willing to deliver,
Right.
then the rule says you got to come pick it up. If you want to
Yep.
buy it, you got to pick it up. And I am not kidding. And then what's even worse?
What?
Why they want to get mad that you won't deliver the $1 item? How you getting mad? Don't get mad. So look, I don't know what in the world is going on with that one, but that's on some different.
So that's funny. So I have a Facebook Marketplace story. So we're in the process of like packing stuff up and moving, and so I need boxes, and I've been kind of shocked like how expensive boxes can be to buy when you can't find them for free. And so I found someone that was selling these boxes on Facebook Marketplace, and so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna pay for them. I'm gonna go grab them, go get them. And so I get there, and as I'm pulling up, I was like, I should probably let, my husband know like the address of where I'm at in case anything. You just never know, right? Just being safe. So gave him my address, texted him, and go into the house, and it was a lady, super nice, and she's like, yeah, all the boxes are they're in the basement, and unfortunately I can't go down there and help you, because some type of medical thing. And so I was like, feeling a little uncomfortable. I'm like, no problem, I can do that. And then as I'm walking down towards the basement, she makes a comment of like, I bet you think once you go down there, you're not going to ever come back up. And I was like,
Bruh.
why would you say that?
Whoa,
And,
hey, whoa. Look, I'm not going to lie.
and
This
I was like, you
already,
know what? It's all good. I already texted my husband. I let him know where I was at. And so, like, I said that to put myself at ease. Needless to say, I'm still here, still alive, got the boxes. It's all good. Um, but it's just interesting.
no, that sounds like a Lifetime movie opportunity.
Oh, and this is how my life ends. I go to get boxes off of Facebook Marketplace.
Look, don't become a Lifetime story, the story of Jennifer Haese,
Right?
box shopper. All right. Look, okay. I understand. All right, we're jumping into the next segment, which is word association. I say a word and you tell me what comes to your mind.
Mm.
First
Okay.
word. You ready?
Yes.
First word, food.
Food. Ooh, memories. Memories.
Memories?
Yeah.
Okay, break that down.
Um, so growing up, um, you know, our family had very little means. And so there was a time in my life where I just, um, it was difficult. It was really hard and we struggled with a lot of different things. But one of the best memories I have is, my dad would always, he's the cook, he's the chef in the family, and he would always make these really wonderful dinners. And he always made it special. And, even though we didn't have a lot, there was really good memories surrounding the dinner table and that time together. And he also did a lot of special things with food. Like I'll never forget, gosh, I must have been, I don't know, 10 or 12 years old. And I have younger siblings as well. And so, we couldn't afford to necessarily go out to dinner for Valentine's Day or, some type of holiday. And I'll never forget one Valentine's Day, he made a menu and he wrote down different options like on a piece of paper. And he came to our rooms and he said, I'm taking your order. What would you like for dinner tonight? Here are the options. And then he, made our special dinners and he set the table and, put some candles on it. And, I thought that was just such a sweet gesture that's always just been burned in my memory of what a great opportunity to do so much when you don't have a lot.
Shout out to Dad.
Shout out to Dad.
All right, I like that. Cocktail or beer?
Ooh, cocktail. But actually, can I say neither? And can I go with wine?
You can say whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I would. If I had to pick between cocktail and beer, I would say cocktail. But if I actually had my first choice, it would be wine.
Okay. Do we got a favorite wine?
Oh, I'm an equal opportunist.
Oh.
So I like most of it. But I would say, my preference is red. The drier, the better. But I ain't going to be picky.
Okay. I respect that. I'm one that chooses by what's available also if that is my choice.
Right.
All right. Netflix.
Oh, so that's so fascinating. So when I think of Netflix, I actually think of COVID because I have binge watched more stuff on Netflix in 2020/2021 than I think I ever have in my entire life. So yeah, it's crazy. It's an unbelievable resource, right? That's available, and
What's
now I'm hooked to all these shows, and I have all of these like emotional commitments to these characters that don't even exist.
what's the favorite thing you binged? What was hot?
Oh gosh, that's such a hard question. I would say what I'm into right now is sometimes, okay. So when people like are always being like, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this, it's so good, it's so good. I kind of sometimes I'm a little hesitant. I'm like, eh. But finally I caved and I started watching The Crown and I'm hooked and I'm already into season 2 and it's really good. But there's a lot of really great shows, or even like mini series, if that's the correct terminology. Like The Queen's Gambit, I thought was really cool, and that's about a chess prodigy, a female in the 1960s, and just there's so much out there, and that's what I love about Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazon.
Ooh, danger.
Bruh.
Danger. It's so accessible. It's so easy. You can find anything. And I've really, really had to insert some self-control of like, is this a need or is this a want? um, but I'm not gonna lie, I love Amazon. Maybe too much.
What was the last thing that Amazon got you on?
Oh, it's so weird because I do so much shopping now through there. This is going to sound so silly, but like So the dishwasher pods that we use for our dishwasher, like at the store, I think if you can get I think 28 or 32 pods in the bag for like, I don't know, 14.99 or something like that. And on Amazon, I can buy like 72 pods for like 20 bucks. And I'm like, why would I not do that? So then if you have Prime, it's free shipping and it's all good.
That's true. Look.
So, that's one of my quotes, go broke saving money. So,
I like that quote. We might have to steal that quote. All right. Music.
mm, feeds the soul. I love music. I wouldn't say every type of genre, but 99% of the genres that are out there, I love becoming immersed in something I don't know. I love hearing new things. I love the memories of older music that I listened to, that I would play. And, once again, shout out to Dad. Like, I credit him because he was definitely in like 70s, rock. And back when I was a little kid, 10, 12, teenage years, like that's the last thing I wanted to listen to. I wanted to listen to like, pop music or hip hop, and he made it a game and he made it fun. And so whenever we were on long car rides or whenever I would go deer hunting with him when I was a little kid, he would put on the station and he's like, well, let's make a game of it, So a song would play and he's like, I'll give you three guesses as to who it is. And eventually I was able to discern like the tone and different aspects of what make bands unique or individuals unique. And then it just became a way of life of just appreciating different things and listening to those nuanced details of what makes an artist an artist.
Okay. I can appreciate that. So I think that you can really tell a lot by to what a person listens to by what they're rocking in their car, because I think that is truly where when you're in the car you are playing what you really listen to. So what's rocking in your car right now?
Oh, so okay. So what's rocking in my car ties to like what so I love going to concerts, and obviously with you know last year with oh,
Okay.
all right. So last year with COVID, I love going to concerts. Concerts are just a part of an experience that I love doing and love being a part of. And so last year I was supposed to go to Alanis Morissette's like anniversary concert, and it got rescheduled for this September. So I've just been, grooving to her Jagged Little Pill CD in my car as a way to preemptively be ready and prepared for that concert experience. But it's fascinating too because recently I just bought tickets to see Elton John next year, and I wouldn't say I'm a big Elton John fan, but I think there's something to be said about, just what an incredible musician he is. And I thought, this is going to be one of his last tours. Like, go out on a limb, see it, experience it, because it's probably going to be my last chance. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Elton John would be a really sweet concert to check out. I'd want to
Yeah.
see Elton
Super
John.
excited.
Okay. Friendship.
Mm. Essential, at least for me. It's a part of my being. I have no family that lives close to here, or family that I see on a regular basis, and so my friends are really an extended part of my family. And I think it's just really remarkable that as we grow and evolve as people and maybe engage in things that we normally didn't do in the past, it just exposes you to an opportunity of meeting new people. I'll say, you and I work together at UWO, and you've been one of my closest friends here in Oshkosh. And I'll never forget when I left UWO to work at FETC, like that was one of my biggest fears of like, I'm leaving this community, I'm leaving this group of people that I've grown so connected to, and I don't know if I'm going to meet anyone else that is going to fit those needs. But I am happy to say that I have, and it just continues to grow. Like you just bring more people in the circle, and it's a really wonderful experience.
I think, look, as somebody who's had a chance to work at Fox Valley Tech for a quick second back in the day, uh, they got some really cool people there. Like I
Me
really
too.
enjoyed my experience there and the people, and they were amazing people, and they did amazing things for the students.
Yeah. Amen.
All right, next segment uh, is called the Kosh Hidden Gems. It's an
Mm.
opportunity for you to share a hidden gem of Oshkosh, whatever you think. It could be a place or food, anything. So, what is your Oshkosh hidden gem?
Oh gosh, that's hard. I don't know if a couple of things come to mind, and I don't know if they're quote unquote hidden, but they're just little pockets of places that I enjoy. So back, before we were in the house we're in now, we used to live on Washington Avenue. And before living on Washington, I had never heard of the Waters, which is the yacht club that's just down the road, but they have a really reasonable like social membership. I think it's like $100 for the year. And because it was so close, that's how we discovered it. And it was a really nice little pocket where you could go and, enjoy the water and see the sailboat races and, have a drink. So that's a place that's really kind of close to my heart because it was a part of so many memories back when we lived on that side of town. And we still try to make it over, but obviously not as frequently now that we're on the west side. But I love the Waters. Another pocket that I really like is the Payne Arts Center. I love the fact that they have different, exhibits that come through. And even if I may not necessarily be drawn initially to an exhibit, it's an opportunity to explore and learn and grow what's being presented. And, and I also love that they have things for the kids, like they have Midsummer Night Dream in the summer, which is a play. It's that is performed by local actors, and they do it on a stage outside, and all the kids get to sit around, and it's really enjoyable. And of course, they also have like the Nutcracker in the castle with the Sugar Plum Fairy thing at the end, which that's the kids' favorite part because that's when they get the cupcakes. So,
There's cupcakes.
oh yeah.
See, this is why we have this segment, because I didn't know that there were cupcakes involved. Now that interests me.
Hmm. And they're big cupcakes. They're good.
Okay. All right. Next segment. What's the Kosh need?
Mm. That's a hard question. Um, I think that while the Kosh has a lot of offerings for the size of the city it does, one thing that stands out to me, and I think it's only because of the fact that I grew up in larger cities up until the point where I moved to Oshkosh. There is, in my opinion, a lack of diversity within the community, and sometimes I think diversity offerings as a way of, I think about like my children and wanting to expose them to different things. And while there are some, pieces or things, especially through like UWO has a lot of different events. It'd be nice if there were other community-based events, that I could expose my children to, and instead of having to take them, to Madison or Milwaukee.
We got room to grow.
There we go.
Yeah.
You said it way quicker and more efficient than what I
Bruh. We got room to grow. All right. Well, I agree with that. Next segment, the Naughty/Heroes Corner. This is an opportunity for you to nominate something, someone, an organization, whatever, to the Naughty or Heroes Corner. So, what do you got?
Well, I'm sure that this has, probably already been said, but I think it's worth repeating. I just want to give a shout out to all the K through 12 teachers, who have made extreme modifications in order to support our students and our community, and, also to, higher ed and technical colleges for adapting, to the pandemic and trying to meet the needs of as many people as they possibly can. And obviously two frontline workers and everyone else. But what speaks to my heart is just my experience with my children, and how difficult that was for me as a parent to adjust. And I can't even imagine how it would be for, being on the opposite end and having 20 kids that you're, having to do that for.
I, you know, I want to expand on that just a little bit, and I just want to ask, you teach,
I do.
and so how was it for you? What were the changes, or how did you remain connected to your students? What were the modifications you might have had to do to be able to still effectively teach, considering the circumstances that we all had to face?
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily for me, from a technology standpoint, I was already well versed, to the platforms that were being offered. So there wasn't a learning curve there. But I agree on the connection piece. There's something to be said for in-person teaching and having that face-to-face interaction. And I'll be honest, I desperately missed it, over the last year and a half. And I'm happy to share that, starting this fall, I'll be back in person for at least one of my classes. But one thing that I did that I found to be really insightful and helpful was I would do these confidential journal entries as a part of my class. And so what I would do is, I'd ask a series of questions. But the first question was like, how are you doing? How are you doing at FETC? How are you doing in life? How has, COVID-19 or this pandemic impacted you? Are there stressors you're experiencing that I may not know, that could be helpful? And then I asked them some questions about the class, but really the centralization or the point was to let them know that I care and that I'm a resource for them, or even just an avenue to be able to speak to someone if there were stressors in their life. And the one thing I was just blown away by was the amount of vulnerability and the level of sharing and the level of stress and the level of detail that each of my students were experiencing. Some had, multiple kids and trying to work from home, go to school and do, that homeschooling at the same time. Other individuals lost their job. And so just a variety of concerns. And I feel like by opening that door, it allowed for conversation and connection to happen that may not have been able to happen before.
That's awesome.
And then it's also too, it's one thing when someone shares something, right? But then you got to do something about it, like to your level of ability, right? And so it's getting them connected to community resources or campus resources to help support them. It takes a village. So
if the pandemic didn't show us one thing, they did show us that it takes a village.
For sure.
Yeah. And to overcome it takes a village. So I couldn't agree more. Okay. We're ready to jump into the topic of the week. Kosh listeners, as you know, if you've listened to shows in the past, the topic of the week is chosen by our guest. And I'm absolutely really excited about this week's topic of the week because it's something that I've toyed with, me and my wife have toyed with in our mind and have had conversations about, and there's I too scared to ask or not enough resources that felt comfortable enough to reach out to learn more. So I'm excited to jump into this. And this week's topic of the week is foster parenting. All right. So, Jen, please share with the Kosh listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think before I can dive into that, I have to give a little bit of background information as to how my interest in that area grew. So when I was in law school in Michigan, I actually worked at a community center and I was a facilitator for a variety of classes. And I'll never forget, I had this student in my class that, I mean, he would always show up, but he sat in the back of the room. He listened to his music. He never participated. He was never involved, despite my constant, prompting or requests. Like he wasn't engaged. And, but he always showed up. And I thought that was just such a strange combination. And so I'll never forget one night I stayed late at work. I think I was leaving work around 8:30 at night, but it was in the summer, so it was still like relatively daylight out. And as I'm driving, I'm seeing the same student, the same kid, just walking kind of, by a football field. So I pulled over and, I asked him if everything was okay. And, I hate to say it this way, like, but why aren't you home? Like, it's a Tuesday night, you're only 13 years old. Like, why are you not home? And, he broke down crying and he said that he lived with foster parents and there was multiple kids in the house. And I guess the father, according to him, would, drink pretty heavily and be violent. And so he had a routine. So he was in my class because that was something to do. And then he had other stops that he would do after my class. But then what he would do is he would walk until like 9 or 9:30 at night. And then he would go home because by that time his foster dad would be passed out. And I was just blown away by that story and that experience. And, I don't know if it was my naivety or just my lack of exposure, but it really opened my eyes to a system that there needs to be good people in it, right? There needs to be good people in it to help support other people. And not to say that, all foster situations are bad or negative or, abusive, but I do think that it does exist, especially with the vulnerability of what this student shared with me. And so that was my first exposure, right? Or my first understanding of like, wow, there's this opportunity and obviously there's a need. So after I graduated from law school, moved back to the Oshkosh area and had my own practice, but would take court-appointed cases. And some of the cases I ended up taking were, as a GAL or a guardian ad litem. And so that gave me the opportunity to work on both sides of the aisle. So sometimes I would represent the child in the situation where it's a CHIPS case, which is child in need of protective services, where they're removed from their home for maybe a variety of reasons. And then sometimes I even represented the parents who had their child removed, who are working towards getting their child back. And I think that experience really solidified in my mind, like, I know now is not the right time, but when the right time happens, like, I really need to explore and start this journey. And I don't know if this is like TMI, but like, I've never, me personally, have had a desire to quote unquote birth a child or be pregnant, but I've always had a desire to be a mom. And I thought, there's so many kids that are in this world that need a home. Like, I don't need to have one to help, right? Or to be a parent. And so, eventually, ended up getting married, and Andy's probably not going to be happy that I'm sharing this. But so when I first connected with Andy and broached the subject of like, let's be foster parents, he wasn't that excited about it. So I did what any good wife would do. I just ordered the paperwork, filled it out, and sent it in.
Oh, no! Oh man, you just elbowed him into it.
Sometimes people just need a gentle nudge. So, eventually he got on board, and he's an amazing dad. And so, long story short, we had a placement. Our first placement was a little boy, but we only had him for a couple of days. And I will tell you, it was so rough on our family when we had to take him back only after a few days. The bond that you start to form with this little individual, it's strong. And I'll never forget, like, we have two older boys, and, when I had to break the news that, the county had decided that the child would be returned, the boys were crying, and Andy was crying, and Andy's like, I can't do it. I can't take him to daycare today. So, so I did that. And I think part of what allowed me to work through that process or decompartmentalize was that, background of serving as a GAL and that other experience I had in Michigan, and knowing that, sometimes this is the process, and you have to support it. And after I ended up taking that little boy back to daycare, which at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure his mom picked him up. Andy's like, I can't do this anymore. We can't foster anymore. It's too hard. And there was a quote that I saw once on a foster care board, and it just stuck with me. And it was, every child deserves a family whose heart breaks when they leave, right? Because the child they're innocent in all of this, and all they need is that support, however short-term or long-term it may be. And so
that's powerful. I just get that's so powerful.
Yeah, thank you. It's wonderful. So, long story short, gentle push, aka shove. We ended up fostering again, and her name is Emma. And when Emma came to us, she was 4 months old. And, we always had the envision that if it worked out and the cards fell as they may, that we would really like to adopt a child if they became available through foster care. So, Emma came to us when she was 4 months old. But, life works in mysterious ways. So Emma was a sibling. She's in a sibling set of 5. And or at that time 4, because PJ wasn't born yet. And we had Emma for about a year, and then, they call us and they're like, well, her older brother, who's in the system, needs a place. We really like to keep siblings together. Would you be willing to, take Riley? And the answer is always yes, right? And so we're like, of course, and so we brought Riley in, and, has a different set of needs and hurdles that he's worked through in life just because of his situation. He was in the system a little bit longer. So Riley came to us when he was 3.5. And then about a year later, we get it, or I say we, but it's really me. They always know to call me.
Yeah, let's get that corrected. We
right? So they're like, okay, well, we knew mom was pregnant, but we thought that, typically how it works is, the baby is born, there's some observation periods, etc. And then, potentially that baby may be removed from her care, 6 months to a year down the road. Well, that didn't happen this time. And what ended up happening was they called us when the baby was born, letting us know that, the baby was going to be removed from the mother's care, and that they needed someone to be able to foster, like, directly out of the hospital, like once the baby was released, because and the baby's PJ or Paxton. And so he was a preemie, and so he was in the ICU for a little bit. And but we went to visit him, and then once he was released, we brought him home, and it's a remarkable journey to go from no kids to 3 kids in about 2.5 years.
Oh, yep. And I have figured out that you are on speed dial with the foster care people.
Yeah, absolutely. And so our story has a happy ending in the sense of, they were with us for a long time, but summer of 2019, we officially adopted all 3. And that's so amazing. we had a big adoption party and had a lot of family over, and it was just a really remarkable experience. And, I think one of the things that, just because it has a happy ending and, from foster we went to adoption, there's still a lot of pieces to navigate that we're still trying to figure out, as it relates to, so for example, Wisconsin is a closed adoption state, which means that, once the person who adopts, you can decide individually whether or not to have communication or share information with the birth parents. And if you choose not to, then that's your right because we're a closed adoption state. However, given the age that Riley was at when he came to us and the importance of just continuing to support the birth parents, we decided to continue to have contact. Right now it's limited and it's very specific as it relates to, maybe sending pictures, school pictures or, other family pictures that we take or updates. Like they text me, I would say maybe about once a week. And they just ask how the kids are doing. And, I always respond letting them know, or if there's something going on, as relates to a concert, like, I'll send them the video from the concert that, Riley just participated in. So it's hard. I mean, it's hard, but, I think all the kids know, that they're adopted. And, when we have that anniversary date in August, we call it, our adoption day celebration. And I created this photography book that they can go through and look at and remember that day and all the people that were there to help them celebrate that, but also try to keep them connected in the way that's appropriate, to their birth family.
That's just amazing. There's so many. Well, how old are they now?
So PJ is 3, 3.5. Emma is 5.5, and Riley is going to be 8 soon.
Oh, you got a lot going on.
Yeah.
That's a busy house.
It is, and the other thing too, I mean, gosh, I hope I'm not talking too much. But
it's hard to talk too much when it's your episode. So
3 snaps. So like I said before, how I started the conversation was, they were a sibling set of 4, and then once PJ was born, they became a sibling set of 5. So Emma, Riley, and PJ have 2 older sisters that live in the Oshkosh area that, are under a guardianship with their great grandparents. And, with COVID, it's been really hard because, with the great grandparents, we just wanted to be really mindful and safe, not to spread anything or get anyone sick. And so now that, we're vaccinated and it feels a little bit like the reins are loosening a little bit, I'm actually going to be picking up the older 2 girls this coming Monday. And it's going to be a surprise for Emma and Riley and PJ, and we're going to go to the pool together. And so, it's my goal to do something so that way all 5 siblings can be connected, during the summertime once a week, and then when school starts, probably once every other week or once a month, because those are their siblings. And even though they don't live together and they have, a different life journey, I think it's important to keep them as connected as possible. So
that's just flat out amazing. It's more amazing also that you're being thoughtful and taking into consideration to make sure that relationship with the other older 2 siblings is still there. I mean, that makes such a difference, in the future. They're gonna, they're not gonna have to go find their sisters.
Right.
They're gonna know their sisters, and that just means the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the most recent update is the fact that, their 6th sibling was born a year ago in New York. And, interestingly enough, we were actually reached out to when Mom gave birth to her 6th child, because now we're at a point where we have 3 of them. But that was literally right when the pandemic just exploded in New York City. And there was a lot of uncertainty in our life. And the last thing I wanted to do was travel to New York and or even have a baby be traveling, a newborn baby. And Andy, I will say that sometimes I can be the heart, but he can be the brain in relation to, could we do it? Yes, but like we're at a point where we've taken on so much. You have to have faith in the system. You have to have faith that there's other good foster parents. You're not the only one, right? And so I'm really happy to share that her name is Mia, and she was recently adopted by, a couple, two men in New York, and we've had contact, we've shared pictures, and now we're at a stage where we're trying to plan, are they going to come to Wisconsin to visit us, or are we going to go to New York at some point to visit them? So that way Mia knows, and the children know that they have another sibling out there, and trying to keep this family as connected as possible, despite the miles and the distance. So
You got to celebrate that.
yeah,
That's good. Okay. So that's a journey. That's a lot going on right there. I don't think that's Lifetime Network. I believe that's TLC.
There we go.
That sounds like one of those family shows on TLC. So I think people are interested. Like I think fostering is one of those things that crosses a lot of people's minds. But like I said, you don't know what you don't know, and you might not know where to start or how to begin that journey, and how easy or hard it may be. Can you share a little bit about process or how you connect, or how does someone look into it if they're interested? I mean, someone out there in the Kosh, they might be thinking, oh, I can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd have to pull up the site, but it's the county website. And if you just put in foster care Winnebago County, that website will come up, and I'm happy to send that to you afterwards if you want to share that with any listeners that reach out. And certainly they can reach out to me if they, want to have a conversation, one-on-one as it relates to my experience. But, kind of step by step, it's first reaching out to the county, and then they send you kind of basically what's known as an intake packet. That's a lot of paperwork. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of paperwork that you have to fill out. And then from there, that gets reviewed. And then they typically do a home visit. Then there's an interview process. And then at that point, if all those, T's are crossed and I's are dotted, then it's a waiting game. And I will say, I was shocked how quickly we were placed, with even our first placement to our now, permanent family. There's a big need out there. There's a big need for a variety of age brackets. And so, we ended up choosing to do a lower age bracket just because we had two older boys. So we tried to balance that out. But I will say too that there's a lot of training. I want to say it was like 20 hours a year or something like that, that you have to do. And some of it can be done before placement, some of it can be done during placement. But there's timelines and parameters. And there's also, once you are placed with a child, there are monthly visits, with the social worker, caseworker, et cetera. And so I will say it is time intensive as it relates to, completing all of the necessary paperwork and the trainings and the meetings. And then there's also, I forgot the terminology, but it was basically like a cross-functional team. So in addition to the home visits that we would have that are required, there was also meetings that I attended or was a part of, as it relates to all of the different professionals that were in place to kind of support not only mom and dad, but also support the kids. And that was my opportunity to provide them updates as to how the kids were doing. And then in addition to that, gosh, there was one more thing and now I forgot. Oh, darn it. Oh, the court dates. Hello. So then of course you have the court dates as it relates to, updates in the process and where the case is at. And, and just so the listeners know, you're never asked to speak as a foster parent, to any large extent. It's really, I chose to go just because of my background and knowing the system and the process. I found it enjoyable, to be able to attend those and stay connected to the legal community, but then to support, the kids and kind of to be aware of, day of as to kind of where the process is at and what you're doing. So I will say it's not for the faint of heart. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think the biggest thing though, or the challenge is that, well, we had a happy ending, eventually after our first placement, it's hard, and sometimes, and oftentimes the child may go back. And I think it's just about, are you mentally in a place, to be able to support that? Because of that, the state's ultimate goal with foster care is reunification with birth family. And so I think it's important to know that going in, and in some capacity being able to wrap your head around that and support that, because there could be a possibility or a probability that a placement or two may end up being, returned or going home.
Okay. Whew. So my last question is, what would you like to say to maybe an aspiring foster parents?
Mm.
What do you want to share?
Oh, I guess a couple of things. The first one would be is, I feel like it's a double negative. Like I mentioned before, when I was, an attorney and I had those cases, I was like, well, now's not the right time. And that's because I was single at that time and still kind of new in my career, and there was a lot of pieces I was juggling. But I will say, if you wait for the quote unquote right time, it may never happen, right? And so I think sometimes it's about diving in the deep end and having faith in the process, in the system, and knowing that there's a wide variety of resources out there to support you, because there are so many children in the system waiting. And so I think, once you feel it in your heart, I think that's what you need to do in order to kind of take that next step. And then I think the last thing I would say is I would go back to that quote, which is, it's hard, right? It's really, really hard. But every child deserves a home whose heart breaks when they leave, right? It's about that support. And, even if it's for a couple of days or a month or 6 months or a year, you're giving that child a loving home that is so critical to their growth, to their success. And just think, where would that child be if they didn't have that? So
that is amazing. Okay. Well, it's time for us to start wrapping up this episode of the Kosh. As I always like to tell the Kosh listeners out there, we are a work in progress, and we appreciate you out there. No, reach out, email. I do get emails. I respond personally to everything that comes in. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know your topics. Let me know if you want to be on the show. It is all open here on the Kosh. Please feel free to reach out at askthekosh@gmail.com. Once again, that is askthekosh@gmail.com. I love, love, love hearing from you all, and I love getting messages that I can share with our listeners or with our guests. That's always awesome. And so also, it is what I like to say is my favorite time of the show. It is shout out time. All right. So it is time for the shout outs. Jen, who you want to shout out?
Oh, gosh, I feel like it's almost the same as the Heroes Corner. I guess I'd do a shout out to the teachers, to the frontline workers. And, more importantly, I think I want to do a shout out, not a name in particular, but to those of us individually and collectively that are working towards making a difference and making this community and our broader community a better place.
Okay. I got a few shout outs. My shout out is going to be if you don't know, now you'll know, is I'm doing a career change right now. And in this career change, I'm leaving the university, and I just want to give the biggest shout out to the university. I cannot express the amount of well wishes and care that they have taken, and people who've reached out and let me know in ways that we've partnered and connected. It is family.
It is.
And I mean that so sincerely. It is, the university is home, and those people that care and work hard and take care of the students and make great future professionals and great humans. I appreciate you. Huge shout out to the UW Oshkosh family. Yeah. Okay. Last thing, parting words of wisdom. Jen, what do you got?
Oh gosh. Parting words of wisdom is probably a quote from Maya Angelou that's always just stuck with me. And it's, you need to do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better.
That is deep. All right. Jen, this was awesome.
Thank you for having me, Timber.
Oh, no, this is a thank you for coming on the Kosh. This was huge. The Kosh.